Hey, hi everyone, and this is the fourth session, and we are still learning Java. In the last session, we started with object-oriented programming with classes and object. So the example of a class is, take example, let's say a student. Student is a class, and let's say if I'm referring to a very specific student with roll number and name is something. So that would be an object. All right. So one class can be created, can be used for creating so many objects, for multiple objects. Perfect. So in the last example, let's revise quickly. We created a student class with the student detail. Every class contained two things: data member and the methods. So these are the data members, and these are the methods, as you can see it here. And we had print student details as well. Okay, and in the last session, we discussed that this is a set data. This method is actually taking variables as a parameter, and this variable data will be set to the class member variable. So you see this name and the single n variable, these are two different variables. Okay. We also talked about the variable scopes. So there are two scopes in Java. The first is class member and second is local variable. Okay. So let's discuss what is class member. The class member variable are those which are defined inside a class. Okay, but outside any method. All right. Perfect. And the local variables are variables defined or declared, you call anything defined in method. Okay, so those are local variable. So guys, can you tell me, the string n is defined here. Can you tell me what is the scope of this variable? Is it a local variable or it is a class member? Yes, Ashwin is right. Yep, Chandrasekhar. Nice. So yeah, n is local variable. The same way RNO, string a, and remaining variables are also a local variable. So what I'm going to do is, okay. So these are the local variable as we discussed. But as you can see, all the variable which are highlighted in a blue color, name, roll number, address, DOB, school name, these variables are class member. So because it is defined in the class. Perfect. So coming back to this method again, we created a main method. So let me open that main method first. Okay, that was example 2. So I created a separate class for writing a main method. Okay, this is to create a more structured and modular way. So the syntax for creating object is student object is equal to new student open bracket close bracket. I have an object of a student with the name stud, and on the stud object I directly called print student detail. So if you remember the last session, this method will print the default values of name, roll number, address, date of birth, and the school name. As get method, we hard coded value as a 30, and the 30 value will be returned it here. Fine. Go back now. Okay. and this line will print the default values. Now it's time to set the values, right? So to set a value, one option is you can directly say object.variable name equal to value, but the problem is this is not recommended. Then we made this variable as a private. So by making a private variable, private data member, it will not be accessible outside a class, outside the same class. So now the data member is private. I cannot simply do this, because name is not visible, it is private. So I wrote another public method in a student class, and this public method is taking a parameter, it's taking values. So it is the name, the number, the city, the address actually, the date of birth, and few other details as well. So set data, the job of set data is to take the values and assign it to the class member. So these are the local variable. I'm copying this local variable value into class member. And another method is there, that is a print student details, which will actually print the details of that student object we already set. Let's run the code and see the outcome. Guys, if you have any questions, please ping me on the chat window. Perfect. So initially, as you can see, that all these values were printed as a null. So for null or 0, the default values. So null is the default for string, 0 is default for integer. Okay. In case of age, the school name is 30. It's a hard-coded value, and school name is null. Setting. Then after setting a data, this is what the data that we set. 101 address is Pune, the date of birth and the age, and XY is the school. Perfect. The next part is the problem, with this approach. Can anyone tell me what is the problem with this approach? Let's have an open discussion. What do you think, guys? What is the problem with this approach? Any random guess? Same output. Yeah, one problem is the data is hard-coded. I'm not taking from user. Shortly we will learn how to take input from user as well. But anything else apart from this? Yeah, hard-coded value is one problem. Yep, I will be changing that code. Any other problem with this code? Private data is shared, but the private data is only used within the same class. I don't think private member is really a problem. Passing values, I didn't get that point, Prashant. All right, not an issue. Guys, let's say the problem is, what if I forgot to set, if I forgot to call set data method? No, it's not again data security, Ashwini. The problem is I created object and I just simply forgot to set a data. Then what values will be there in my object? You will get default values. All right. Okay, Harshal is saying it is only for one student. Yeah, that also makes sense, but right now I'm not focusing on that part. The problem with this code is, if I forgot to set data to my object, then that object will be having the default values as it was like null or zeros or 0.0 or default value for boolean is false, and that way. Let's say I want to create a constraint. I wanted to initialize that object as soon as it gets memory allocated. Okay, so you know, right, the memory is getting allocated at this line, student stood equal to new student. At this line object is created and memory is also gets allocated. So what I want is, I want to initialize this object at the time of creation, you know, immediately after creation of that object. So for that there is a concept called as constructor. So we will be learning that constructor shortly. Okay, let me create a new project for today. I don't want to change that yesterday's code. I will just keep that as it is so that it will be there for your reference. Creating a new project. I will create a Java project, a general project. Project name is, let's say, day 3, object-oriented programming, constructors. Finish. Okay, I got this project created. It's just an empty project. Okay, let me create that project again. I think there is something wrong, so let me create the project again. File, new, Java project. The project name is day 4 and oops, constructors topic. Perfect. So I got this project created. It is day 4. I think I should rename it, or that's fine. I don't want these other projects to be open. Right now there are 4 projects open. So what I will do is I will just simply right click on this 4th project, close unrelated project. So it's going to close all unrelated projects which are not really required for us. So let me create and simply just copy that class from the previous example. Okay, so this is a student class. I just copy pasted that class from the previous project. Now the job of this day 3 project is done. Let me close it. And all right, so I have a student class. I think I should reduce a font size with little bit. Okay, right now it is 16. I will just change it to 14. Okay. I have that class. Let's create a main class, or example 1. Write main control space enter. Okay, and let's create the object of the student class. Student stud is equal to new student. Okay, see, at this time only I want that values to be initialized. You know, there is a concept called as a constructor. So constructor is a method, you know, but it is not just a normal method, it is a special method. Okay, where the class name and method name, it means the constructor name, must be same. Okay, this is first rule. There are few rules on constructor. The first rule is the constructor name should be same as that of the class name. Okay, so constructor is just like a method, it's a special method. Okay, so this is methods. Okay, There I will write a constructor. So the first rule is it is method, and the method name should be same as the class name. So my constructor name is going to be a student. Second rule is constructor do not have return type, okay? Not even void. So constructor method don't have any return data type, they don't return anything. Okay, these are just a simple method with whose name is the same as that of a class name without any return type. So let me write a constructor. So the constructor name should be student because it has to be same as that of a class name. Generally a method starts with a lowercase, but for constructor we will be following the class naming syntax. So it has to be same as that of a class name. And constructor do not have return data type, not even void, So if you write void, this, you will get some kind of a warning and saying that this method has a constructor name. So just remove that return data type, okay? Because I want to consider this method as a constructor, not as a normal method. So inside this constructor, I want to initialize some values. But the problem is I don't want any default values. You can actually set a default values. For example, name is equal to ABC. So every time when you create an object, ABC name will be set to that name variable, to that student. But again, this is not the right way, So if I create 5 objects and without setting any values, all those 5 objects will have name as ABC. Is that clear, guys? Please give your response. It will help me to understand, are you getting this or not? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for response. For them, who found this very difficult. So for them, again, I'm explaining you. See, we are actually creating object of a student. This is a syntax. Class name object is equal to new student. All right. This is the syntax for creating a new object. So I'm just simply writing a constructor. So the constructor is simple a method without any return data type. You can write a public for constructor. Okay, that is allowed. You can create a public constructor, that is allowed. So constructor is, this is my constructor whose name is the same as that of the class name, and it's a method, opening bracket, closing bracket. Inside this method I'm just setting name equal to ABC. And if I create, let's say, 3 objects with this, okay, I created how many objects? 3 objects of the same class. And now I'm going to call stud1 dot print student details, the method that we created yesterday. Okay. So let's see what is printing, So what it is printing? It is printing name as ABC, name as ABC, name as ABC. So is it clear, guys? So by creating 3 objects, for every object the constructor is called, and what this constructor is doing, this constructor is actually setting name is equal to ABC. Alright, is that, I hope it is clear now. So let's move on to the next part. The problem with this, again, for every object it is going to set ABC, which I don't want to be, right? Which I don't want to be set as an ABC. So what I will do is, I will remove these values, okay, and I will parameterize this constructor. So by parameterizing, it means I will add parameters to the constructor. So the parameters I'm going to add is, or I can just simply copy this all the methods, I will copy the same code which was there, I will copy the same code what set data was doing to the constructor. Alright, and I will need this local variable also. So just copy that. Perfect. Now I have a constructor, okay, whose name is same as that of a class name, which method doesn't have any return data type. and this constructor is taking parameters, and these values I'm initializing to the variable. I hope this is not very difficult to understand. It's very easy actually. But in that case, this line will give me error, student stud1 is equal to new student, because now this constructor, can you see that line carefully? I'm actually calling a constructor student open bracket and close bracket whenever you are creating an object. So this is a constructor call. If you just simply control and click, it will actually jump to the class which is having that constructor. Now the problem is, when I wrote this code, just before a few minutes it was working, but as soon as I add a parameter to a constructor, it is no longer working. It started giving me error. Now what is that error? The constructor student open bracket close bracket is undefined. So there is no constructor. Actually, now at least I think till now you have got this concept. So this line is actually a calling to, this is a call to a constructor. But right now, is there any constructor which is taking no parameter? The student class having a constructor, okay, and it is a parameterized constructor, so it is taking parameters. So while creating the object, now I added a constraint. I was discussing about the constraint on the object. I added a constraint on object creation. Now here onwards, I will have to pass all this data while creating the object itself. Now let's say for first example, I will just say control space, and there you can see the different options are. You need to pass string, then n is name, roll number, then I think date of birth, then string, I think this is string, and this is address, date of birth, and the school name. Okay, these are now mandatory parameters. So I'm going to add this parameter. The first is, let's say name is, let's say Vikram. Second parameter is roll number 101. The third parameter I will add is the address. I will just say Bangalore. Next parameter is the date of birth. You can give anything. That's the 21st Jan 187. Okay, and the next parameter is school name. So I'm giving ABC school as the name of a school. Now the error from the first line is gone, and now the error is shown to the second and third line, because you cannot create simply like this. You cannot create object simply like this. While creating the object, while we are calling a constructor, and that constructor requires a object. So I will have to pass the different values here. Let's say PQR, okay, 102. Let's say Delhi, some date, just giving some random date. And 12 May 1973. Oh, sorry, 19. Okay, finally the school name is, let's say, Don B school. Okay, let's create the third object with some other values. Now let's say this is Anshul, roll number is 104, city is Mumbai, some date of birth, let's say 4 July 87, and finally school name. So SCH name. I'm just writing school name as SCH name. So I have three objects created with a parameters, parameter values, and let's see what it is printing. Is it printing default values? So as you can see that first student is Vikram, second student is PQR with all his details, third student is Anshul with all his details here. Anshul,
Muted.
okay, perfect. All right, so I hope it is clear now. Okay, so there are two types of constructor. First constructor is, okay, I will write that in code only. Types of constructors. First is default. The default constructor has no parameters or no input parameters, or you can also call as arguments. Whereas the second parameter is, second type of constructor is parameterized constructor. Okay, that is the second type. So parameterized constructor, it means, it takes input parameters, and this is all initialized. Why we use a constructor? Can anyone tell me why we use a constructor? First is, yep, very good, to initialize object. Very good. So the main reason why we use a constructor is to initialize the object. That's one reason. Second reason is, yeah, initialize object, or you can also use it for set defaults as well. Okay. Then any other reason why we need a constructor? The other reason why we need a constructor is to have constraint on object creation. All right. Okay, perfect. So to initialize the object or to set a default value, this is one reason. Another reason is to have constraint on the object creation. Let's say if you are not passing the parameter, you cannot create the object. Constraint is like a condition. So adding a condition on object creation. So until and unless you are not passing the parameters to this constructor, the object cannot be created that way. Or you can have some condition as well. So that way. So let's say roll number should not be 0. So you can have that constraint rule here. Let's say if roll number equal 0, if someone is giving roll number as 0, you can actually print a message saying that invalid roll number, and you can actually close your program. Let's say I want to close my program as system.exit, and just pass on 0. System.exit line will close my program. So let's come back and see what will happen if I pass roll number as 0. Let's pass the same values. I'm passing the roll number as 0 or some negative value. We can actually add a check on that. So let's run it and see what happens. So you can see that invalid roll number and my program got terminated. Perfect. So this is a constraint that we added, but right now I don't need this check, so just ignore it. Okay, coming back here, I will delete this fourth student and I'm done. So I hope it is clear what is constructor, why we need a constructor, how to create a constructor, the difference between the types of constructor, that is default constructor and parameterized constructor. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next topic. Now guys, the problem another problem with this approach is, let's say I want to create an object of a student and I want to initialize it after some time, like previously we did, right? I created first object, so it was having default values, and then I initialized using a set data method. Okay, so if you want to do that as well, I should have both the option. I can create the object, like first one option is I can pass the values. Another option I wanted to keep is, create an object student equal to new student, simply saying new student, and then I can call student dot set values, set data, sorry. Let's say name will go here, roll number will go here, give something else, address is going here, let's say TN, IN, date, I'm just giving some dummy data, and then school name. Alright, I wanted to do something like this, but the problem is I added a constraint. I cannot create simply object with no parameter. That means there is no default constructor. In our class, we have constructor as a parameterized constructor. Okay, so this is parameterized constructor because it is taking the parameter values. So you cannot simply call the default constructor. Default constructor means a constructor which has no parameter. Okay, we already covered that two parts. So default constructor is no input parameter. Parameterized constructor is just taking input parameters. But I'm trying to call the default constructor which is not existing, so it will give me error. Add arguments to match. It is going to give me error saying that this method is undefined. This constructor is undefined. But I wanted to keep both the option. So what you can do is, let's go to the student class and add a default constructor also. So I'm adding one more constructor. Okay, follow the same rule, no return data type. Okay, the class name and method name should be same, and there is no parameter. So this constructor is default constructor. Okay, and there is another constructor which is actually taking a parameter, and this is exactly taking 1 2 3 4 5, exactly 5 parameters, and this constructor is taking a 0 parameter, that is absolutely no parameter. So come back here, I will just save this code first, come back here, and now you can see this line is no longer giving me any error because I have two constructor, one is parameterized, other is default constructor. So let's do one thing. I will just comment this code and I want to only print the data of student object, print student details. Let's run it and see the output. Fine. So as you can see, the same values are getting reflected here. Okay, so same values are there getting reflected here. So this is working, so in this case I'm calling a default constructor. In this case I was calling the parameterized constructor. So in my student class I have actually two total constructor. This is one and this is another constructor. Okay, so this mechanism, can you see this? The method name is same. Okay, but there is a difference in the parameter. This parameter, there are 5 parameters and there is a 0 parameter. These parameters are different. This mechanism is actually known as overloading. Okay, overloading. Overloading, it means having same method names, okay, having same method names but different parameters. Okay, so we have multiple methods having multiple methods with same method names but different parameter. Okay, this mechanism, this is actually one of the feature of object oriented programming, which is known as overloading. Okay, overloading, it's a part of polymorphism, and yeah, that's a overloading. So I have overloaded constructor. That is the reason I will call this as a constructor overloading. Okay, so this is a constructor overloading having multiple constructor inside one method, one class, is known as constructor overloading. Now what is the use of constructor overloading? So by overloading a constructor, we get a freedom, right? The we get a freedom over creating object. So you can say you can create the object with the parameter values, or you can create an object with the default values. So it is up to you that how you want to create the object on this class. So that is the reason we overload constructor. Now the question is, how many constructors you can have? How many overloaded? How many overloaded constructors we can have? You know, the answer is very easy. You know, there is no limit. As long as there is the parameter, as long as the parameters are different. Okay, I'm saying that the parameters are different. That means let's say I have one constructor which is taking only one parameter. Okay, and this constructor is only taking one parameter, let's say string v. Okay, and I'm initializing that v value to name only, so name is equal to v, and for other fields, you know, for other fields I'm keeping the default value as it is. So this constructor is only initializing the name. Okay, you can specifically like n or something which is meaningful. So this is one constructor, this is second constructor, this is the third constructor, and this constructor is a default constructor which is not taking any parameter. This constructor is only taking one parameter, and this constructor are taking like 5 parameters. So let's say I have another constructor, public void. Sorry, you cannot have void also to the constructor. We already discussed that point. So there is another constructor which takes string name, or I will skip only n, and string, sorry, it is roll number, so it is integer r. Okay, and now I am going to initialize this name variable and r and roll number variable with n and r value. So name equal to n, roll number equal to r. So this way I just now initialized the two values, and other remaining address, DOB, school name will be kept as a default if I am calling this parameterized constructor, because there only I am setting two value. You can also have a parameterized constructor, you know, something like this. Let's say I'm changing the order of this variable. Okay, now this constructor is actually having string integer argument, and this is having integer string argument, but you know, body is the same. This is also a valid overloading. Okay, this is also a valid overloading because those parameters are still different. This is string int, this is int and string. So that is the reason this is also a valid constructor. So far how many constructors we have written? 1, 2, 3, 4, and total 5 constructors we have written. Perfect. So I hope you got what I'm trying to tell you on when I say that, you know, parameters should be different. So The parameters should be different. It means either the number of parameters should be different. There should be a difference in number of parameters, or the data types, or the sequence. Okay, I hope you got this point so far. All right, let me know if you have any questions, guys. I would be happy to answer those. Let's have a quick Q&A round. Okay, so I was talking about why we need the constructor overloading. So I just now wrote a example. I have a point 2D class which has x and y coordinate, and there I have written three constructors. The one constructor is taking one parameter, second is taking 0 parameter, and third one is taking 2 parameter. So with the help of these three constructors, I get a freedom to create the object, point object, in three ways. So in first way, I can just create the object with the default values. In second constructor, I can actually pass one value, and the same value will be initialized to x and y. In third constructor, I'm taking x and y's value as a different values. Okay, and I'm printing those values for your reference. So you see here p1 value is printed with the default values. This is also p1 after setting some values, and this is p2 value where I'm only setting 10 value, and the 10 is initialized to x and y. So this is an advantage of why we need, this is the reason why we need overloaded constructor. Okay, let's continue to next topic, that is having the variable naming in the same class. So let's create a new class. Okay, let's say class, let me create some meaningful name. Let's say I'm creating a point 3D. Okay, point 3D class. It will have x, y, and z. Okay, so int x, y, and z. I have three variables. So there I want to have a constructor, a parameterized constructor which will take the value of x, y, and z. So I'm writing a public constructor point 3D. Okay, it should be parameterized with three parameters: int x, int y, int z. Okay, and there I will set x equal to x, y equal to y, z equal to z. Now this code is little bit different than what we have learned so far. So every time when I created any method, I intentionally gave a different name to that variable, but now I gave the same variable name. So int x, int y, int z, this variable name is same as that of x, y, and z. And then I have written x equal to x, y is equal to y, z is equal to z. Okay, I will write another method, public void print. Okay, this print method is supposed to print the values of x, y, and z. So I'm printing the value of x first. Let's say x plus comma the value of y plus y, then comma the value of z. I want to print these values, comma separated value. So please have a look into this code. Okay, now I can create a separate class for main method, or you can simply write a main method in the same class also. Anything is fine. Till now I have created main method in a separate class, but if you like, you can create the main method in the same class as well. And there I will create object of point 3D. Let's say p is equal to new point 3D. Now as you can see, there is only one constructor available, Okay, default constructor will not be get added because we have defined a parameterized constructor. And the rule is, if we define a parameterized constructor, or if we define at least any constructor, the default constructor will not be added. Okay, let's say if this class is not having any constructor, let's say I'm commenting this. Now as you can see that it is now having a default constructor. But if you have any constructor to the class, then JVM is not going to add a default constructor. Now there is only one constructor available. So to this constructor, I'm just passing the value 10, 20, and 30. Okay, and to the next line, I'm going to to the next line I will call p dot print method. Now guys, you have to tell me, what this line will print. P dot print. Guys, please reply. What do you think, guys? What this will print? Okay, I see like 10, 20, 30 answer. Few answers are like default. So okay, so let me tell you the answer. The answer is this is going to print 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, let's run the code and see the outcome. Can you see that 0, 0, 0 here? Now why is this happening? The reason is this x, this y, and this variable is not the same xyz variable which you see here. Okay, can anyone tell me what is the scope of this variable? Can anyone please tell me what is the scope of this xyz variable which are there in blue color? Okay, there is no global scope. Okay, let me tell you again, there is no global scope. Do not use global word. Okay, this is within class only, yeah, which is right. Instance, which is also right, but the scope is class member. Okay, or another name is field. Okay, class member or field. But these xyz variables, these variables are having a scope as local because these variables are defined in a method. Okay, these variables are defined in a method, so these variables are local to this method, whereas xyz can be accessed in some other methods as well because these are class member. Fine. So in this constructor I have written x is equal to x. Can anyone tell me both this x, what is the scope of this x and this x? The scope of the first x, equal to x, the scope of both variable is local variable. Okay, because this is suppressing the class member variable. Local variable are suppressing the class member variable. So I'm just saying local variable x equal to local variable x. That means copying the value of the same variable inside the same variable. So that is the reason I'm getting this warning. This assignment to the x has no effect because you are copying the value of same variable into same variable, in the same variable itself. So this has no effect because let's say x is equal to having 10 value, so I'm saying 10 equal to 10, x is equal to 10, in the same variable I'm storing the same value. So that is the reason this is giving me warning. Actually I wanted to store the value of this local variable into the class member variable x. Okay, let me repeat it again. I wanted to store the local variable value into the class member value. Okay, so you can define this using this keyword. Okay, so let me write this keyword. Let's take example. I'm writing this dot y. Can you see that color of y is now changed and the y is getting selected here? Okay, if I select this y, it is getting selected the local variable. This is local variable. But when I wrote this dot y, that means it is selecting the class member y variable. So if you say this dot some variable name, that means the class member variable name. So for other variable also I will write this dot x, this dot y, this dot z is equal to z. So copy the local variable value into the class member value, into class member variable. I hope it is clear. So by writing this, it means I'm actually trying to access the class member field, not the local member. Is this is clear, guys? So if you see somewhere this, it means the class member, not the local variable. You know, always remember this point. All right. That's all for today, guys. Thank you very much for attending this session, and hope to see you tomorrow as well. We can have a Q&A session after this call. So let me know, if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Okay, I forgot to execute this program. So for the last time, I will just run this program, and there you can see the outcome as 10, 20, and 30, because the local variable, I'm passing this 10. First it will go to the local variable, and from the local variable I'm copying it into the class member variable. Okay, I hope this is clear now. Thank you very much.